Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where people can see your troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
Hi, gentlemen. How you doing?
Very good, thanks, Ross. How are you? How are you, Arthur?
Not too bad, Ross. Not too bad, Nigel. Hope you're both well.
Yeah,
fine. Well, it's 2021. The lockdown's coming to an end, and we are back podcasting again. It's good to see you both, and you're looking so well.
Yeah, well...
Well, you are, Nigel.
Yeah.
Well, I'm well looked after, boys. As you know, I've been out for a 12 months. I'm like the prisoner of Zenda, here I am.
Oh, well, it's... Don't worry. I think your probation will be up soon.
Yeah. He'll be tagged for 6 months when he leaves.
Have you been jabbed yet, Nigel?
No, have I? Heck, no. I hit my 60th last November, and I'm due to go back to work on the 15th, and I was hoping to have it before then. But there's no sign. I've rung up and asked, but nothing as yet. How about you?
No, not yet. It's just the vulnerable.
The oldies.
Yes, the vulnerable. I know. Arthur, you had yours. Was that rabies or was that COVID? Which one did you have?
I had mine 3 weeks Sunday coming up now, and so Caroline had hers last week. So the lady who gave Caroline her jab said that the 12 weeks is coming down rapidly. So I'm expecting a call now within the next couple of weeks to have the second one.
Well, I'll be gutted if you have the second one before I get my first. I'm going to complain.
Why?
Why?
Why are you complaining?
Well, my need is greater.
In what respect? You go in the morning now, you give them their work, and then you go in the staff room and drink coffee then till whatever time.
No, I don't have a staff room.
You're nowhere near them, man. Chances you were catching COVID are like me winning the pools.
And you don't do the pools.
Well, as long as we're not arguing yet, that's the main thing.
No, not yet.
So I thought this time we'd talk about books and films and what we think is better. I realize that's short-sighted because I know now that, or I realize now that Arthur doesn't read books, so it might be a very short conversation. So Nigel, we're relying on you for this one.
Oh God.
So yeah, I'm just kind of, I've read some brilliant books that have been pretty ordinary movies, and I've seen some great movies that have been ordinary books, and I'm just wondering if there's anything that kind of jumps out to you guys. So, I mean, to kind of kick us off, I mean, the one for me I remember from a very early age was when I read Jaws by Peter Benchley, which was a great book. Really well written, a lot more in the book than what was in Spielberg's film. But then, to me, Jaws as a movie is pretty much as close to perfection as you can get. So I on that one, I couldn't really say that there was a dramatic difference between the two of them. But I mean, do you have any like that, Nigel, that kind of jump out to you?
Yeah, I think a good one for me, because I was reading it at the time my son was born, was Jurassic Park. I read that in '92, and I really enjoyed the book. But I think what the film did for Jurassic Park was bring your imagination to life. The effects at that time, although they look a little bit dated now compared to some of the later versions of the films of the franchise, it did, I think, create an extra edge to it. And it isn't exactly the same as the book. There are some changes, quite dramatic, major changes, actually. But having said that, I think, like Jaws, they can be enjoyed as their own sort of entities. I don't think there's any point in comparing the two and saying one's better than the other, because I think they're both equally good in their own way. And I think lots of books and films do that. I know the likes of Clive Cussler and Stephen King on some occasions as well have been extremely disappointed with the film versions of their books. And that's because basically sometimes, even when they do get input into the production, what they've visualized on the page either can't be done in the same way on the big screen, or if it is done on the big screen, they have to change things for dramatic effect, because the structure of a film is different to the structure of a book. And so I don't think... So yeah,
Jurassic Park is a great example for me. I mean, I was obsessed with dinosaurs from a very young age.
I was too.
And I read Jurassic Park, or was reading Jurassic Park when the film came out. And I went to the cinema. I had two reactions in the cinema. I mean, as someone who was really into dinosaurs, I actually got pretty emotional in the cinema, because it was the first time where I felt like we were kind of looking at them for real.
Yeah. You had the same effect as them in that, in the vehicle when they first pull up. Yeah. And
but you're right, the book itself it's a fantastic book. And even though it's like they threw away, I think, the first 5 to 10 chapters, and they threw out the last sort of couple of chapters as well. But yeah, I mean, both stand alone to me. Stephen King point is completely and utterly, I mean, that's an entire podcast in itself. You know, The Shining is a great film. Has very little to do with that book, to be honest. That's like the setup. Salem's Lot, you know, the David Soul movie. What that had to do with the book, I don't know. I enjoyed the film, but to me, that book is probably King's finest work, and they just don't stand recently, I know. But what about you, Arthur? Is there anything that kind of jumps to you?
I like watching talking pictures, I do. Black and white films. Tale of Two Cities, obviously, which I read when I was young, obviously, and probably read it in primary school. Lord of the Flies. Golding's Lord of the Flies. Obviously, I read that for O levels. I watched that the other day on Talking Pictures, and I think the book is comparable to the film. But bearing in mind that film was made in early 60s, right? So, you know, I don't know what Lord of the Flies would be like made today. Obviously, they'd pick their actors to play the parts and that type of thing. So I tend to sort of go more film than book. Caroline's an avid reader. She's an avid reader of Lee Childs. And I think Lee Childs is a typical example of, I don't know where Tom Hanks came into that, but they wanted a big name. They wanted a big name, didn't they? Not Tom Hanks.
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise. But they wanted a big name to play Jack Reacher.
Yeah.
Well, from what I understand, and I am reading the books, I think Jack Reacher is about 6'6", isn't he? Built like a brick outhouse. And then you end up with a 5'8" midget. So I think what Hollywood and all these sort of film studios do, they exploit the book a little bit, don't they? They have like poetic license with it. So if you're an avid reader of Jack Reacher and you saw the first film, you think, you know, you've got this comparison with Tom Cruise and Jack Reacher. so I think it loses a bit from the book that way, you know what I mean? If I was an avid book reader and I'd read Lee Child's and I watched it, I think, well, he's totally miscast. I would have preferred something like Liam Neeson taking the part, a bigger man, that type of thing.
Well, I mean, Tom Cruise does guarantee you 500 million, so maybe that's...
Well, exactly. So I don't know what the position is with these authors when they obviously sign the rights over to the film company, but basically they're selling their soul for money, aren't they? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. In all fairness,
I would think Lee Child's a little bit disappointed with Tom Hanks being Jack Reacher. Because let's be fair, if you were in a supermarket...
Would he be more disappointed with Tom Hanks than he was with Tom Cruise? Or
Tom Cruise. I keep thinking Tom Hanks in my head because he's a fabulous actor. Tom and Tom is the word association. I don't think Lee Child's would be very impressed with Tom Hanks in a supermarket getting a tin of beans off the 6'2" shelf for an old lady, which is where Jack Reacher got his name from, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Lee Child is in the supermarket. There's somebody trying to get something off the top shelf, and he reaches up and he thinks, that's the name, Jack Reacher.
Well, I mean, Tom Hanks, as you were obviously a bit obsessed with him at the moment. I mean, Tom Hanks was probably the biggest example of it, right? There wasn't many people in the world that hadn't read the Davinci Code.
Yep.
Now, the Davinci Code movie, I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. But and it may be an unpopular opinion, but I didn't like the book.
Yeah.
I thought the story was great, but I don't think it's a particularly well-written book.
No, there's been a lot of criticism over the writing, but having said that, he still managed to sell the rights to a big film company, and it became something. It took on a new life then, didn't it? Mm-hmm. And what Arthur was saying about Lee Child as well, I understand Lee Child's decision to go with Tom Cruise, because Cruise owned the production company. He was the money man. He was the one who wanted to put the money into the film on condition that he played the role. Now, the one thing you can say about Cruise is that when it comes to action movies, there isn't anyone better, really, in all fairness to him. If he had another 12 inches of height, the bloke would have been perfect. But it was a letdown. I have to say, I watched the film, and the major thing that was lacking for me in the Reacher films was the fact that he just wasn't Reacher. There was nothing about him that resembled the descriptions in the book. Now, I think Child described him as Lawrence Delalio. I think that's how he pictured him, looking like Lawrence Delalio. So we're not talking about a good-looking guy here. Sorry, Lawrence. Yeah, we're talking about someone who's been through the mangle a bit and rough and ready, and a tough, big guy. And I think even Delalio isn't as big as Reacher is described in the book. But I can understand why Child went for it, because at that time he had a successful book franchise going and nobody was coming knocking at his door for the film, which was absolutely mind-blowing. It took, probably 15 years before it actually made the screen. And that's quite shocking in its own right.
Yeah,
it's one of those things, you know, what do you do? And as Arthur said, yeah, you do have to sell your soul sometimes if you want to see, but you have to be prepared to wave your little baby goodbye and say, look after it the best you can, nurture it the best you can, and let's see how it grows up, because that's all you can do as the writer, as the author of the original book, because the screenwriter takes control.
I find that I go back to the older books like Lord of the Flies, The Three Musketeers, the Tales of Two Cities. I find that when they are sort of either made into a film or a TV series, they don't lose nothing. The black and white acting is tremendous. And the TV series is fabulous acting in it. And you've still got that sort of sense of how it was, basically.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. But the difference between something like that and the Reacher franchise, for example, is that Child decided to make his character 6'5", and built, like, as you said, a brick outhouse.
Yeah.
So you know that is instantly going to rankle with the fans of the book if you put, as you said, a 5'8" star in that role. But Davinci Code again, yeah, it wasn't a particularly brilliantly written book, but I loved the film. I thought it was really well done, really slick. And you can guarantee that it's going to be a good film if they've got Tom Hanks in the lead part. I don't think he's played a bum role yet.
No, I don't think he has, actually. I mean, he's definitely got a good household Oscars there, isn't he? So
yeah,
you know,
Tom Hanks could have won like 4 Oscars on the trot. It's just that the organization didn't want that. You look at Philadelphia and Forrest Gump and the ones around that sort of time period. You could have given him Oscar for every one of them.
Yeah.
But Castaway, you know what I mean, when he's on his own on an island, you know what I mean. I watched that film in the cinema. Like, no sooner had I sat down, it was finished. That's how good he is. So that you're going then into organizations and it's all politicals, this, that, and the other. But I think, you know, as I'm not an avid book reader, but from what I've heard from people who like Nigel and Caroline, they've ruined books through the films more than the other way. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to you guys before about, you know, I'm very well, I love the American writer Steve Alton, who writes you know, science fiction, sort of, well, scientific reality as well. So The Loch, and he's done some Mayan books, and the books I love of his, again, shark related, but it's the Meg series about the megalodon shark, and they did a film a few years back with Jason Statham.
Yeah.
And I mean, and Steve had that book in development hell for like 12 years or more, right? He's pushed to have a film made of that book. And, you know, as a fan of Steve's work, and definitely as a fan of that novel, and I do love that book, it's a real page turner. What we ended up with on the screen was completely unrecognizable, other than a couple of character names from that source material. And, you know, and Steve's fans were quite vocal about that, saying, well, you know, we were looking for a dark, edgy thriller here, not a Jason Statham, you know, roundhouse kicking a shark. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're right. But then again, you take the dollars and you have to kind of give up that control, don't you? I mean, or you take the you know, the route of like Mario Puzo, who wrote the screenplay for The Godfather as well as writing the book, you know, and then you have that consistency through that. You know, but then the guy wrote Superman screenplay around the same time as well for Chris Reeve. So if you can have that control, but is it that the mediums are that jarring? I mean, you guys write. I mean, we'll talk about maybe what Terry would work like, right, in that sort of world soon. But is it because, and I think it is, that as a writer, your landscape of thought is in a very different place, right, to a screenwriter and a director, because you're creating. You have to really fire that imagination, right? You can't just show things, you have to explain it and all that. So sometimes, maybe it's sometimes a certain stories. I mean, let's talk about one of the authors we all love, Russ Geraghty, right? Let's talk about his book, Dead Legacy. You know, screams David Lynch to me if it was to be made. But how would you translate the feel of that book onto the screen? You know, how would you capture that? I mean, could you see it working? Because I mean, it's been done, you know, Haunting a Hill House and stuff like that. But I mean, how could that work? Do you think Russ would think then that a director could capture that image and that feel that he's created in the book?
Well, on personal opinion, I think they probably do it a downside better. I do, because there are things that you can do in the film medium that can bring a story, especially a sort of supernatural thriller, can bring it to life. And it's the unseen things, it's the suggestion of things that, if it's done right, can be far, far more effective than the blood and guts type horror movies that are there just to shock. It's all that stuff that's suggested, you know. It's like the Woman in Black.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's such a good horror film. And because most of it is the tension that they're building up to this point, and of course the music they use as well. So I think when you combine the music, the tension that you can build from within a visual medium, I think for horror films, it should be the ideal, for horror stories, it should be the ideal medium, really, because it can actually blow your mind if it's done right. Well, as for Terry Maguire, I think
Tom Hanks.
Yeah. Well, Arthur and I both said that if we were ever going to get to that stage, it would have to be Mark Lewis-Jones. I think he's such a good actor.
Oh, definitely.
He's Welsh through and through. He's the gritty sort of right build size. And I think without us both speaking about it, we both came to the same opinion, because we sometime after I think it was the 5th book was written, we were chatting about this, and we both came up with Mark Lewis-Jones as
we asked our sort of readers, who'd read the books, who they like as Terry Maguire, and we had people like fella from Talbot, was Michael Sheen. No, I created Terry. I never saw Michael Sheen playing Terry. After the first book, once we got into the writing of him and the character, for a Welshman, it's Mark Lewis-Jones, because he's got that edge about him. He can play soft, he can play hard, which is the character of Terry Maguire. So I suppose if Terry Maguire ever went into a film, a massive film, you'd probably have somebody like Jason Statham acting as him, something like that, and that's what they do, I mean, I think they take a lot of things away when they create it. It's even on TV, because it's the same thing. A TV series is a film, isn't it, basically, in 10 parts. And they all bang on about Line of Duty. Line of Duty was fabulous procedure-wise, etc. But what let it down in one of the series was the chase at the end. When this girl is chasing a 4x4 all over the place and catching up with it. And I was watching, I thought, oh, they've spoilt it. And who wrote it?
Jed Mercurio.
And I don't know what he must have been thinking when he watched that and think, oh, that's not the way it should have been. Like, that's not the way I wanted it to be. But he sold his soul, and that's the end of it.
Well, he actually wrote the screenplay, so I think he actually put those words down on
but paper. did he do the scene at the end, or or did he just do that for like dramatic effect? I don't know.
I wouldn't have thought they'd have messed with Mercurio, because he's got the sort of magic touch. So I think if that scene is there, which it is, obviously, I think it's down to him. He's got to carry the responsibility.
But the characters in that, they spot on there. They spot on. Well, when you go to the murders at the farm, is it when that girl's supposed to kill their mother and father?
Oh yeah.
And you look at the characters then, the SIO, totally miscast. You know what I mean? The way he treated the DS, totally wrong. And I watch him and I think, oh, that's not the way it is. That's just not it. So I don't know who's the advisors on that, the police advisors, because it certainly wasn't right, and he spoiled it.
Yeah, and you know yourself, Arthur, that it doesn't matter what your rank is. You treat everybody with
Oh,
respect. And
yeah,
I know I never rose above the rank of constable, but a particular sergeant had a go at me one day, which was unjust. And you know, I asked him if he wanted to come out and discuss it outside. There's no way someone would speak to me the way that SIO, the senior investigating officer, was speaking to the people, and more shame on his subordinates actually for accepting that, because there's no place for that in the police
that's right,
force.
yeah.
But,
And it
but do you
spoils, it
think
takes
that's
the edge
because
off.
you know the reality, though? You two obviously know the reality of it.
Yeah.
For many of us who have not done that job, we'd have no way of assessing it. So it's purely drama to us.
Yeah, you know, when you're
Yeah.
in an incident room and you're the DCI, the DI, or the DS, right? Because those are the three ranks, right? And you've got 20 DCs in front of you. You don't say to them, DC Jones, DC Evans. You say, Philip, John, Dick, those are your actions. And they go back to you, no problem, boss. Okay, Sarge. All right, DI. And that's the rapport. And when you watch some of these programs, and even in film, you think that's not the way they talk. It's never changed in the police force. It still goes
No,
today.
that's right.
It's like a time immemorial respect, basically. But so if you're a subordinate, you're usually called by your first name.
Yeah, and the thing is, Arthur, as I know you'll agree with me on this, that you're a team, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
And the sergeant, the inspectors are
Oh.
the captain and the coach.
Mm.
And if you want the best out of your team, you treat them well. And what you do as well is you pick a centre forward to play up front. You pick a full back to play in front of the goals. You pick the team to suit their strengths. So like Arthur has run a team, I've never done it, but I know that if a particular job needs doing, he'd know exactly who he'd want to do that job. And it makes sense. You know, but what Arthur was saying about some police advisors on some of these shows, they're shocking. I remember watching a film again. I think it was London Has Fallen.
Oh.
That film with
Gerard Butler.
Yes, and there's a black commissioner of the Metropolitan Police in that film. Okay, and he's a good actor, really, really good. Plays the role well. But they called him inspector. They called him chief inspector. Not once did they call him commissioner. And he's loaded with all the spaghetti on his shoulder, and they call him inspector. And this is another police officer calling the commissioner inspector. You know, it's toe-curlingly bad. You know, these are basic things. Like the uniform he was wearing wasn't right. He was still wearing the uniform with a belt. Well, the belt went out when I joined the police in 1981 in the Met. So it's just get these things right. If you're going to do it and spend the money, it's these things that annoy people, especially. You think now the Met's 28,000 police officers, plus their wives, their children. So throughout the country, there's probably 100,000 serving police officers, somewhere around there, I would imagine, not far off. So there's 100,000 people you're winding up to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the challenges with the reality-based stuff, as you say. But I mean, you said something interesting earlier, Nige, you know, about these things that are unfilmable. Some of these books are unfilmable. But then, you know, you see like Peter Jackson, what he did with Lord of the Rings. And I mean, I read Lord of the Rings as a young boy. And that would be absolutely something I would say is unfilmable, or was.
Yeah.
But I guess with modern technology now, do you think there's still anything that's kind of, you know, out completely unfilmable, cannot be done?
No, I personally don't. I think anything is possible now. Anything is possible at home, really. When you think of it, you can shoot your own movies for YouTube. You can use After Effects. Other software editing programs are available. but you can use After Effects. You can create all sorts of things. So if you can do it at home, to a lesser extent, obviously, then the possibilities for filmmakers with big budgets is just mind blowing. You know, you can see Jurassic Park. I just think those animations are getting better and better. They're getting to a point where they're going to jump out of the screen at you at some stage.
Yeah, it's I mean, Jurassic Park's a great example because, you know, the film holds up today. But then there's, you know, you could go even earlier than that. I mean, I would challenge anyone to go back and watch the original Ghostbusters, and those effects still work, to be honest, and Back to the Future, you know, and so it's all been done. But Jurassic Park, and especially the Jurassic World as they are now, I mean, that's just incredible. I mean, it's probably getting harder for the actors because they're acting to green screens and things like that. You know, whereas at least back in the day, I guess there would have been something there to act to, you know. But now, I mean, I think it was when George Lucas did the Star Wars prequels. You know, they were showing those sound stages, and there was nothing there. They were literally just stood in green rooms, you know, because everything was being put in by computer.
You know, you go back and look at your westerns. I watch a lot, like I said, I watch a lot of westerns on TCM and all this type of thing. And one of my favorites on telly was The Lone Ranger when I was a youngster in the 50s. And then they bring out The Lone Ranger with, what's his name in it?
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, sorry. No, what's his name?
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp, right on Tonto. Well, you know what I mean? I never seen such a load of rubbish in my life. You know what I mean? So, and then you look at perhaps a Clint Eastwood Western and absolutely fabulous. You know what I mean? Unbelievable, you know what I mean? Especially forget the spaghetti ones, because, you know, that's when he started, wasn't it? But when you see his direction, you know, the Civil War and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Absolutely amazing. Dancing with Wolves, I watched that, you know what I mean?
That is a masterpiece. That is a masterpiece.
When it started, you know what I mean?
Great
fabulous
book.
acting, fabulous scenery, fabulous music, and when you watch that, you think, yeah, that's the way to do it.
Totally brilliant. Yeah.
But you know, what I mean? And then you look at some of these films. Look at the budget: 85 million, box office take-ins 3.5, and I think that sums a lot of these films up. You know what I mean? They lavish all the money on it, but it detracts from everything if it's from a book or whatever, or a series that was on the telly.
But we are, I think it's the expectation of special effects now. It's probably taken away from storytelling a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's taken away from acting as well.
Yes.
I think it has. You know what I mean? You go back, like I say, watch a lot of old films. You look at the acting in it, you know what I mean? It's fabulous, you know, and they never had what they got today. Never had anything near what actors have got today.
Well, I mean, I go to, you know, we've talked before. I mean, I have a love of the movie Psycho, Hitchcock's Psycho, which I think is an example of when the film surpasses its source material. Not that Robert Bloch's book isn't great; it's a really good book. But you know, when you get a director of that caliber making a horror movie, you get something very special.
The Birds.
So you get you know, Anthony Perkins giving the performance of his the performance of his career and the performance that ended his career, really, because he was Norman Bates from then on in, right?
Oh yeah, of course he was.
So what's your vote on, Arthur? I know what you're going to say. Do you think the book will beat the film? Or are you too illiterate?
I'm probably too illiterate, Ross, to be honest with you, but you know what I mean, I can only go on the ones I've read, like I've mentioned, and they're comparable.
Yeah.
They are comparable. I'd like to see a modern day version of Lord of the Flies to see how that would compare to the 64 version, black and white, and to the book. It probably wouldn't be anywhere near the book, because I think the book would be too old-fashioned for the modern screen. So they'd have to juggle it about and change things. And I think that's what happens with a lot of books. You know, they'll have a book, they buy the rights and think, right, let's chop and change it now. Let's get the old scalpel on it because we want to make millions and millions of dollars. I think with some books you can't do that.
What about you, Nige? Book or film, Nige?
Oh, don't say Russ Garrity.
Yeah,
I tell you, I used for Russ Garrity's book. I got it here. It's holding the door open. Fabulous.
Oh, I'm glad it's got some use. Anyways, some use to someone. But I was just thinking of, you know, the birds. I was also thinking then about H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds, The Time Machine. And I still think, to some extent, I'm contradicting myself here, that the earlier versions of the film of those books are far superior to the later versions. I loved
the 1950s War of the Worlds was a great film.
Oh, a cracking film. And so was The Time Machine. I thought that was really well done. And then you see the later versions of them and you think, oh, what are they playing at? And they've got all the technology at their fingertips and they have to change it in such a way that it just destroys the original sort of nostalgia for the earlier film, you know, and nothing comes close to those two films, I think.
No, I mean, the effects are sort of, you know, the effects erode the storytelling, I think, because they are so prominent now.
Yeah.
You know, and it takes away, I mean, Jaws is, again, back to Jaws, because we're coming to the end of our time, but...
Plastic Shark,
but, you know, you didn't need the shark because the story was there, so...
And the music.
And the music. And definitely the music.
Oh, yeah, we're talking about films. Phantom of the Opera is a typical example of a name, isn't it? Now, we all know the best ever Phantom of the Opera was Peter Carey, the Welsh singer and actor, who took it on Broadway. He took it all over the world.
Right.
Who did he cast as the Phantom? Antonio Banderas.
Right. That was also Gerard Butler.
Was he in it as well?
It was Gerard Butler, yeah.
Well, whatever. And I think that sums Hollywood and filmmaking up, personally, because he wasn't a film actor.
Mm-hmm.
He was a stage actor. They go for, like I say, Butler or Banderas. So I think if John Wayne had been alive, he'd have had him in it.
John Wayne in Phantom of the Opera, I actually probably would pay to see that.
Yeah, I think I would as well.
Yeah.
Get on your horse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
You should write that one down. Just write that book.
You should be a casting director because you would come up with some crackers, I'm sure. That would be a work of genius, I think. That would be brilliant.
I like all the old musicals like James Cagney, you know, I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy and stuff like, I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy. And then he turns into a gangster then in the next film, like.
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing. So versatile. And we haven't got actors like that anymore, really.
Well, a lot of it, I mean, it's interesting because, like, you brought up War of the Worlds, right? Especially, like, I love that 1950s version. You know, I think it's amazing. But, I mean, when you look at books that are filmed, I mean, Christmas Carol is probably the one that's been done the most. And every time they do it, it seems to reflect, I guess, the era it's made in. But there's not many, I can't think of any that have been really truthful to the source material. You know, I mean, the general story is told, but they cut so much out of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's the dramatic beats as well are different, you know. There are certain beats within a book that you have to get more or less right to make sure that the story reads well. And so it's not just about telling the story, it's about putting the things in the right place as well. So you've got your dramatic interludes and quiet passages. Well, with a film, they are different. You know, you have to create these beats in different places. So that's why, you know, lots of books are truncated, or they chopped to bits and rearranged just to get that story across in a way that makes sense for an enjoyable, entertaining film. So I don't blame filmmakers for that. They're doing it because they know it works. And why mess with something that is a proven formula? And I just think that we need to think of the book and the film as two completely different beasts.
Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
As long as you go into a cinema thinking, I'm going to see something that's based on the book by, and just keep that in mind, then it'll be okay, I think.
Yeah. So, so let's wind this down then. Let's ask you two, because you two are the fiction writers. If Hollywood comes a knocking, you obviously mentioned you have an actor for Terry, and I know there's other projects that you have under your belt as well. Are you comfortable enough to give up your literature offspring to hand it over to somebody else?
Nah, not really. I've had a belly full of the publishing and the directing world, but to be honest with you, I think it's a nest of vipers. Personally,
Good book, that is.
That's one of our books.
That's one of our books. Good plug. Good plug. I think it all depends what you want, isn't it? If you want money, happy days, give it away. But I'd be very uncomfortable unless I was actually, or the both of us actually there. I'm not saying directing it, but each character was the character that we wrote in the book. Do you understand me? So the professor is the professor. I wouldn't like the professor to be like a 33-year-old Ryan Reynolds. Do you understand me? Because he's not. He's a 65-year-old Anthony Hopkins. And like Nigel says, when you go through a book, I think the characters you create, even though you don't tell people how old they are, I think people, once they read it, think, well, he's a professor, you know, he's a pathologist. This man isn't like 23, 24, unless you make it in the book like we did with the one lady. She's a young pathologist who's come from another hospital at short notice, and she's about 40 odd, and she takes a shine to Terry, obviously, and Terry takes a shine to her. You know what I mean? This type of thing. So if you're making a film about that, you know, I wouldn't want to say Meryl Streep playing her. I'd have somebody a little bit younger. That's what I would like, because it balances the plot and the book up, whereas a lot of books now are not balanced once they're on film.
Yeah, and I would agree with majority of that. The only thing I would say different from my point of view is that I know I don't know enough about the filmmaking side of things to be able to perhaps make decisions in relation to a production. So like Arthur said, definitely with the characters, you know, you'd want to make sure that they are close to what you've written. You'd want the dialogue to be based on the dialogue that we've used, the story to be closely based to the story that we've written. But as for production values and things, then I don't know enough about it to be able to say, look, you can't do this, you can't do that. I'd have to trust in the knowledge of people who have been there and done it before.
Like if they did come in and say, like, we're giving you 10 million for the book or for the series, I'd say, Nigel say yes. And I say, no, you're not having it. And that's the end of that. Simple as.
Yeah.
Well, that would be a very interesting conversation for you two, I would imagine.
It would be.
Well, I think there'd be a court case, wouldn't there? Because we got no contracts, so you know what I mean. It's like anything else, you know what I mean. It'll be like litigation for about 25 years. We'd be dead.
I mean, that could be a series all of its own.
No, truthfully told, if it did ever happen, yeah, they can have it.
At the right price.
Personally, yeah, have it. Yeah, have it. How much is it? 5 million? Yeah, 2.5 each. You happy with that, Nige? Yeah, thank you. Let's go and read some more books.
You answered on behalf of Nigel then.
Well, no, I think Nigel will agree with me.
You might want more than 2.5.
No, that'll do for me.
Yeah.
No, I write all the plots. You'll only have 30%. No, and I put the 20. I put the 50 because he's a good polisher.
Well, you're just drowning him in compliments today.
I didn't. When he mentioned that word to me when we wrote the first book, I didn't know what polishing meant.
I thought that's how you did your hair.
Yeah, wax on, wax off.
I said, what are you talking about polishing? Polishing what? You said polishing the book. I said, Christ, what are you talking about?
Right, boys, I have thoroughly enjoyed the last, whatever it's been, 40 minutes. It's really good to see you both, really good talk, and we need to do this again soon.
Yeah, great.
Well, I think what it does, Ross, as you know, you're very busy, Nigel's very busy. I'm being retired, you know, I'm just grafted to the chair, I am. You know,
yeah.
Caroline brings me my food and I do wash the dishes now and again. But,
well,
you know, I've got more time than you, Per.
I was going to ask you earlier why you've always got the same scarf on, but it turns out it's just the back of your chair.
Yes. It's, so I've got, you know, I suppose it breaks it up for you too as well, you know, I mean, because you're very, very busy. I know you're very busy, the pair of you, and with what's happening, obviously. It's a bit different for me. Like, I'm going to go for a walk now. I haven't been out for a while, so I'll go for a little walk. Like, whereas you've got to go, you know, you'll be doing your work, Nigel will be doing whatever he's got to do for tomorrow.
Have you dusted off the walking frame?
Walking frame. Zimmer, huh? Christ alive!
You want one of those Zorbs? You know, those big Zorbs?
I got a running machine upstairs. I went on it last week. Caroline said, no, take your time now. She said, just 20 minutes. I did 45 minutes, right? I couldn't move the following day, man. I said, can you get me out of the chair? Yeah. She said, what's wrong with you? I said,
do me a favor. Next time you're on there, can you get her to film it for me?
Yeah. And we'll show it on the next podcast. We'll show that on the next podcast.
Well, I've been thinking of doing a...
Yeah.
I've been thinking of doing a marathon. Like, start today.
They're called Snickers now, mate. They're called Snickers.
Yeah. I start today and finish in like July, perhaps, or August. You know, do a couple of miles every fortnight. Terrible, dreadful.
Yeah, definitely get. Let's get some footage of that, and we will analyze it the next time we get together.
That's a TikTok sensation.
I do it in my jockstrap.
Oh God! Oh God!
Which
on that bombshell.
I think I'm feeling sick.
Yeah.
And I haven't washed it for about 6 months.
Oh God.
I don't know. I don't know, boys.
What is wrong with you?
I'm suffering from melancholia. What is that?
Melancholia. It means you feel sad.
Yeah, I'm suffering from that. I am.
Yeah, I can tell.
It is.
I can tell. Well, I'd love to stay in offer you therapy, but as we said, we have to call it a day. So, Mr. Williams, it is a pleasure as always to talk to you.
Yes, and you.
Arthur, I feel like I've had a conversation with you. Yes, we will get together again very soon, gentlemen. Thank you very much. And let's speak soon, yes?
All the best, Nige.
All the best.
All the best, both. Keep safe. Keep safe.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where